Today's episode is sponsored by Branding Iron, Advertising, Marketing, and Public Relations. Since 2007, Branding Iron has helped bring awareness to the mission of volunteer firefighters. To learn more, visit them at brandingiron.com.
Hi, this is Fire Chief Gord Schreiner from Comox Fire Department, Vancouver Island, British Columbia, and you're listening to Dr. Rich Gascoigne on SA Matters Radio. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming. It's time to avoid bad outcomes.
Oh, it's safe to dance. Yes, it's safe to dance.
Hello and welcome to episode 31 of Situational Awareness Matters Radio Show. I'm your host, Rich Gascoigne. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. I'm coming to you today from Erwin, Tennessee, where I'm in town teaching situational awareness classes for nuclear fuel services. Nuclear fuel services is both a strategic asset for America and an economic engine for Northeast Tennessee. With more than 1,000 full-time employees and contract workers, their Erwin, Tennessee operation is committed to manufacturing specialty nuclear materials for the U.S. Navy's nuclear fleet and other customers while protecting its workers and public and the environment. Thank you, Nuclear Fuel Services, for the opportunity you have given to me over the past 3 years to share the situational awareness message with your employees. Before we get connected with this week's guest, I want to give you another update on the changes here at SA Matters. You may recall that I announced a few episodes back that we're working on a new website launch, a premium membership option, a relaunch of the online academy, and a release of some new online training programs. Progress is being made on the new website, but I'm doing most of the work myself, so it's been a little slow going, and with all the traveling I've been doing lately, that's kind of set me back a little bit too. So thanks again for your patience. The new site's going to be pretty cool. I got some new features on it, and I think you'll enjoy it. Just be patient with me as I continue to work on it. For those who are members of the SA Matters community, it means you've clicked on that red box on the right side of the homepage that says SA Matters Membership. You've watched painstakingly as I've developed this site over the past 3 years. The existing site is pretty basic, I admit that, but I wanted to focus more of my attention on delivering some good content to you more than the aesthetics of having a pretty website. But I know the cool stuff keeps people coming back as well. But there are a couple hundred articles on there that you can all use and share and download, and they're completely free. One of the cool things that I've added to the membership opt-in feature is that anyone who signs up for the free basic membership now gets a special report that I've created called 25 Best Practices for Improving Firefighter Safety. So if you're not a member, go to the website and sign up today. It's completely free, and you'll receive my monthly newsletter that addresses situational awareness issues. For those who are members, be watching your inbox. In celebration of the 3-year anniversary as SA Matters, I'm going to be sending out some uber awesome free videos that will be, for all intents and purposes, mini courses that will provide some situational awareness and training lessons that you can share with your members. You may want to make sure that support@richgascoigne.com is on your safe sender list. Otherwise, the emails with the video links might go to your junk mail folder. And I promise you that these videos are going to be worth watching and sharing with others. And if I didn't mention it, they're free. So be watching your inbox, and they'll be coming out soon. I'd like to take just a moment to thank some of the recent hosts of Situational Awareness Matters live tour events. These events could not be possible without the commitment and the support from our hosts. As I said, this week I'm at Nuclear Fuel Services in Erwin, Tennessee. Upcoming between now and the end of the year, I'll be at the Evansville Fire Department of Evansville, Indiana, and the Scott Township Fire Department in Indiana, the Raleigh, North Carolina Fire Department, the Carborough, North Carolina Fire Department, the Matthews, North Carolina Fire Department. I'm doing a North Carolina tour there. The Cook County Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, doing 3 programs touring around the Chicago area, and the Brighton Township Fire Department doing a program just after Christmas in the Pittsburgh area. So thanks to all of our program hosts for helping to get the situational awareness message into your area. And I want to share a piece of feedback that I got from a program attendee that says, Dr. Gasaway, I took your class at the Beaver County Community College on October 29th. All of my firefighters and myself thought the class was great. In fact, after the class, we were so taken about how we were training our firefighters to fail that we decided to do something about it. See, several of us in attendance are state fire instructors, and we just happened to have a structural burn class scheduled the following weekend using an acquired structure. We began to teach the students exactly what you had taught us in class. We made certain that they did a 360-degree size up every evolution. We allowed them to pick their own hose line selection. We allowed them to make the decisions. We made them use the radio and radio command with benchmarks and requests, and we made certain they used a 2.5-inch hand line on attack as well as the 1 3/4 line. At the end of the class, when we did the class critique, the students thanked us and thought it was one of the best classes they had ever taken. They appreciated the fact that they could make the decisions, and most importantly, what they learned from it. So I thank you. It took taking your class to make us realize that we were teaching wrong. Since that class, we've taught one more structural burn and we have 3 more scheduled. We'll be using your advice from this point forward. We will look forward to seeing you again at a class in December at the Brighton Township Fire Department. Again, thank you for all that you're doing for the safety of our firefighters. You are a godsend. Thank you sincerely, Mark Stowe, Fire Chief, the city of Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. Well, thank you, Chief Stowe, for bringing your members and attending the class, and then thank you for paying it forward by taking the lessons from the class and what I teach about how we're training firefighters to fail and taking it to heart and making the changes to improve how the firefighters are being trained. I think you see firsthand here, Chief, is what you're sharing, is that it makes a difference when we look at how we train in just a slightly different way. And as we talked about in class, it's not harder to teach for success. The things that we're doing that teach training for failure are really rather simple solutions. So thank you for taking those and bringing those to life at your training burns. I do sincerely appreciate that. Okay, let's get into our main interview. On February 28, 2009, Elyria, Ohio Fire Captain Joe Pronesti responded to a fire alarm activation call at a college campus. The first arriving engine reported heavy smoke coming from multiple buildings. In search for the source of the smoke, crews learned that the fire was in a tunnel that connected multiple buildings on the campus. Captain Pronesti was involved in advancing a hose line and fighting the underground fire. While approximately 300 feet inside the tunnel on the attack line, his low air alarm started ringing. He ran out of air before making it completely out, disconnecting his regulator, and he breathed products of combustion. Upon exiting, he provided a brief update to his commander, and without warning or his knowledge, collapsed to the ground from smoke exposure and exhaustion. This occurred just a few moments after he had exited the structure. Had he collapsed in the smoke-filled tunnel, the results could have been catastrophic. On a side note, at the time of this fire, the Elyria Fire Department was undergoing an evaluation of the fire department's budget and staffing. There was an outside consultant on the premise at the time that the fire had occurred, and the fire alarm activation, when it came in, to say the least, the crews were worried and distracted because of this evaluation that was going on. And some might speculate that they were also frustrated and perhaps feeling betrayed by the city that they were going through this process for potential cuts. When you're worried, it can weigh heavily on your mind, and your situational awareness can suffer because part of what's on your mind are perhaps the concerns about the evaluation and the potential cutbacks. This can occupy some of the space that might otherwise be used to form your situational awareness at an emergency scene. While Joe only makes brief mention of this during podcast, when we had our conversations offline, it was evident to me that on that fire scene, he and perhaps others were distracted out of concerns over the fire department's cutbacks. Some takeaways you'll get from this interview is the first arriving engine reported heavy smoke from multiple buildings. Captain Pronesti noted that the size up, quoting him, didn't make sense in his mind. This can happen when we receive visual or audible information that is outside of our norm or our expectation. They don't see too many large building fires in Elyria, let alone multiple large building fires all at the same time, all at the same location. This can cause some confusion among the responders. Relaxed inspections and code enforcement led to the tunnels being used as storage locations for extra furniture and supplies, and that provided fuel for the fire. The department was used to handling fires with their on-duty staffing and were of the mindset that they could handle this fire as well, though they would end up calling mutual aid from several other communities. Captain Pronesti went through 4 SCBA bottles and was fatigued, but he continued to press on because his mindset was that he needed to be on that attack line. When he ran out of air, he was, by his estimate, at least 10 minutes into the tunnel with less than 5 minutes of air in his SCBA. As happens so often in smaller departments experiencing an unusually large fire, the responders can get tricked into treating the big fire like it's a routine house fire. A fire in a 300-foot long tunnel with no other way out is anything but routine and certainly nothing like a house fire. As Captain Pronesti shared, his quote, "Ego eats brain," and he was caught up in the perceived need to be in the middle of the action at all costs, even though he was fatigued and perhaps not displaying his best judgment. But we'll let him speak to you about that in the interview. So let's get stuck in with our interview with Elyria Fire Captain Joe Pronesti, who experienced a close call when he ran out of air in a fire in a tunnel on a college campus in Elyria, Ohio.
Yes, I'm a captain with the City of Elyria, Ohio Fire Department. It's located in northern Ohio, just west of Cleveland. It's a old Rust Belt type community, about 60,000 people. My department runs 3 fire stations. At the time of the fire, we had 4, and we now have 3 engines, a truck company, and a command officer. We don't do EMS as far as transport. We run first responder calls, and we go about anywhere from 3,800 to 4,000 runs a year. 75-man fire department.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, it was just around 5 o'clock, 5:30 on February 18th. We had received a fire alarm for Lorain County Community College. And the community college is roughly around 20 buildings that sit on about 50 acres on our farthest northernmost section of our city. And we would get fire alarms there quite often. Our department, for a fire alarm, would send the command chief, our truck company, which the captain rides on, which I was on, and the district engine company, which was located probably about 2 miles south, 3 miles south of the community college. The college, these 20 buildings were all connected. Where the fire started was in a underground tunnel, which connected, probably 17 of the 20 buildings, and that's where their communications were at, HVAC, just tunnels, and a lot of times in the wintertime, you could access these tunnels from any building, and students would walk these tunnels to go from building to building. What happened, though, over time was they would store desks and art materials and everything you could think of, they would store in these tunnels. And on that night, a well, he is in prison now, but it was an arson fire. A gentleman got into the tunnel and poured flammable liquid and set a fire in the tunnel.
Joe, were the tunnels
And
still being used by the students?
Yes, you could still, at that time, you could still use the tunnels. No locks on the door. You could, again, access them easily. Mm-hmm. This gentleman accessed it, poured some type of liquid, and lit a fire. And we received the fire alarm, and like most departments, fire alarm comes in, we go, but again, you kind of let your guard down. And at that time, my department was going through a audit or was going through tough times with lots of budget cuts. In fact, the day before, there was a meeting that was proposing dropping our minimum staffing all the way down to 11 members on duty. We were usually at 17, 18, and we knew this would close stations. So guys were on edge, and I was actually I just stopped prior to that serving as the chief of the fire department. I was promoted as an interim fire chief, and decided with everything going on and fighting with the administration and the mayor, I just didn't want to do that. Stepped back down to captain. And so I was actually, when the alarm rang in the office with the consultant and talking about all your open wounds, so to speak, of your fire department and issues. And so again, our mind wasn't set for firefighting, to be honest with you. A lot going on. And then the engine company on the scene reported he had heavy smoke showing through multiple buildings. And I just couldn't believe it. It was almost like, well, what did he say? And our command chief upgraded. Since this was February and our cuts hadn't taken effect yet, we had 4 fire stations open. So the other 3 responded. However, the one engine company only responded with 2. Our normal complement at that time was 3-member staffing. We had a firefighter go home ill, and so we had an engine company responding with 2, which kind of hurt things also. So we didn't quite know where the fire was at. It didn't occur to me that it could have been in these tunnels. It just didn't. It just still didn't register. Everything was still a blur. And since this was so far away, about the farthest point from my station in the center of town, that we had some time to think about what was going on, but it still, again, wasn't registering. And when we arrived on scene, it was surreal because we had, at that, what I could see, 5, 6 buildings with fire alarms going off and a pretty heavy smoke condition because, again, these tunnels ran underneath just about every building, and the fire raced through the tunnel and filled every building with smoke.
Was school in session?
School was in session. The one benefit was it was still right before most evening classes started. Again, this fire started somewhere between 5 and 6 p.m., so most of the time the classes out at the college, the evening classes started around 6 or 7, but there were still lots of people on campus and they were evacuating, but it was still obviously a life hazard. We still had lots of people around. This is a big campus and a lot of students go there.
Were you guys initially under the belief that maybe multiple buildings were on fire? Yeah.
My command chief thought that, maybe we had, because security was coming to them and reporting, we have smoke in this building, we have a fire in this building, and even though you go through, this was a number of years after 9/11, and it's Elyria, we're not going to have a terrorist attack, so that wasn't going through my mind in the least bit. It was more, boy, somebody's really screwing around here, and again, it just wasn't registering what was happening. Security at that time, was understaffed there at the college. I believe they only had like 1 or 2 guys, and they never experienced anything like this, and to be honest, neither did we.
Had you guys ever previously in the department had any discussions or any past scenarios of what ifs if there were a fire in the tunnel at the school? Or I mean, I wouldn't judge you harshly if you hadn't. I'm just curious.
No, I would say that when the campus was the largest in the station's response that covers that college. Those guys knew the college very well. When you, as a younger fireman, would go and fill in at that station, the veterans would tell you about it. But they were more along the lines of, because some of the buildings were sprinklered, most of them were at the time, but the tunnel was not. And again, the tunnel was filled with things that probably it shouldn't have. That became an issue after the fact when all the powers to be between the city and the college got together, that they knew that shouldn't have happened. So basically it was just a large passageway with lots of HVAC and conduit, and as fiber optics became a big thing in the college, they would run them through there. So you never had that thought of a fire there. You knew they existed, but you didn't know, nobody had any idea that they were cluttered with desks and excess school items.
And that's what the arsonist dumped his accelerant on and set on fire?
He basically put his accelerant all over a pretty large section of the tunnel that he got into and lit it and left.
Okay. So you guys arrive on the scene thinking you have multiple buildings on fire, heavy smoke coming from multiple buildings. Didn't quite register what was going on. So when you said you called for some help, what does that mean in Elyria?
Our command officer upgraded the response. So we responded with a single engine, the district engine that covers that area. The truck company, which I responded with 3 personnel, and including myself and the chief, and then that left 3 additional engine companies in town. All 3 of those engines responded, and we actually we called for mutual aid, but the way my city sits, we're kind of in an odd situation where we're a paid department surrounded by a lot of part-time departments, and the closest paid departments have to go through these towns to get to us, so they were a little bit, as far as response time, away, probably 10-15 minutes. So we never really rely on, in my town, on mutual aid a lot. We always had enough staffing on duty, and we always would handle a bread and butter fire in the city of Elyria as a balloon frame fire in a room and contents. That is our bread and butter. Ordinary construction, wood frame. We don't have much truss. We don't have much new development. So was our fire, and that's what the fires that I had grown up on. Been on now 26 years at that. So at that time, almost 20 years on the department. That's the kind of fire we faced, and nothing like this. Mm-hmm. My company was assigned. The first-in engine captain was able to determine that we were going to go through what was called at that time, the business building. And there were underground grates that were on the outside that you could access, but you could pull the grates off and vent the smoke. They were basically large vents. We first went to do that, and then as they were laying a 2.5 through the building down the stairs, so basically we were facing with, okay, this is a large basement fire. We lifted some grates, and I had my crew then go through that business building, and we met the engine company with their line at a doorway that led into the tunnel, and the doors were closed. So there wasn't a lot of smoke in the business building that we were in. It was clear. You could see everybody. There was a false ceiling in the stairwell there that at the bottom of the stairs where the doors to the tunnel access were at. And you could see the smoke starting to come through the false ceiling, the drop ceiling. I had a tick, my camera. I put it up, and it really didn't register that it was real hot. But conditions were starting to get bad, but it didn't register with me. I'm thinking, okay, we're on our way. We're going to get this fire. I loved the job. I consider myself an aggressive firefighter. Love being a captain. I always, lead the guys and all that other stuff. And I said, okay, guys, let's get ready. We're going to get this. We got my truck company with the engine. We had 5, 6 guys. Let's go. And we couldn't open the door. And we thought there was a lock on it. And we were trying to pull the cylinder. We pulled the cylinder. There were 2 large metal outward swinging doors that we just could not open. And the reason why we couldn't open them was the heat on the other side had basically fused these doors together. They weren't locked, just the heat had fused them together, and we didn't know that.
Did they feel hot?
They felt warm. They weren't that god-awful hot.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I was more concerned with getting in there, and my guys, I didn't personally feel the door. The guys that I were with felt the door, and they were like, it's not too bad, and I took their, not blaming anybody. It's just, no, it wasn't that anything terrible yet, other than we couldn't access a basement fire.
Mm-hmm.
I kept giving my command officer, who is really I have the utmost respect for. We had worked together a long time. We knew each other very well. I was giving him updates, and I told him, we need to find a different way. This isn't working. By then, we had we had SCBAs, our masks, just the exertion of trying to get these doors open, and as the smoke was, again, you could see, but it was still somewhat smoky. You had to put a mask on, and we had our masks on. We had to come out, change cylinders, and things were getting worse. And again, when I look back on it, I say, geez, if this were to happen today, it'd be a whole different thing. But at that time, still was a basement fire. We got to go get this thing. And we knew that we had smoke in every building, so we decided another approach. So by then, mutual aid arrived, and the chief of the one department that responded in used to be an Elyria firefighter and a good friend of mine. He arrived, and I felt a lot better when I saw him. And his name is Chief Frank Root. And I said, Frank, we got to find another way. And again, the old Elyria mentality of aggressive firefighting. We're like, we're going to go. Let's go. And he had his crews from his city of Avon and my truck company, and we had a new engine company boss, a new engine crew, and we stretched to another area. And we were able to access the tunnel, but we were actually, 2 or 3 buildings away from where the fire was burning, and the fire was traveling in our direction. But so we were actually going into the fire, but still, conditions weren't bad. All this time, came out again, changed cylinders, 3rd time, and we said, well, we're not finding this fire. And by then, they were able to force open the original door that we tried. Had heavy smoke and heat that filled the business building. And I told my command chief, I said, Chief, let's do this one more time. Let's go. So off we went. And by then, the business building that we originally went into was filled with smoke, but nothing unbearable that we couldn't get down the stairs until we hit the landing. And then there was a lot of heat that we started hitting fire. And we just kept pushing our way through, hitting fire. And The investigators ended up saying that we had about a mile of fire in the tunnel that charred and damaged the tunnel. And so there was no other direction. It was a tunnel. There was only, one direction. There wasn't a lot of offshoot rooms. The tunnel would change direction, but, you just had to keep moving forward. And that's what we were doing.
So did everybody that went into the tunnel go in from the same access point, or did people go in from multiple?
The second time around, yes. Once we were able to get those original doors open, again, when I back up and say that the second time with the mutual aid crew and chief that we tried to access, that was a different way, but we knew that wasn't going. We didn't have enough hose, and it was too long of a layout, and we ended up going back to the original spot. We had picked the right spot when we made our initial stretch, and we couldn't force that door because of the heat. But when they finally did get it open, actually the fire was traveling towards it was kind of weird because the fire was actually traveling away from those doors just because of the accelerant and just the way of the layout. But we ended up going back to our original spot to launch a good attack on the fire.
What size hose line did you guys have in there?
With 2.5, and then we ended up shutting that down and going with 2 3/4 lines off of gated Y. We just, again, didn't know how much we were going to need because we didn't know the exact length of this tunnel, or we knew that they were underground on most of the campus, but we had nothing written. We had no pre-plan that said they're X number, the feet and this and that. So we basically took 150, 200-foot lengths of 1 3/4 smooth bore tips and went off the gated Y and started attacking the fire.
And was it on your mind that there's only one way out of this? I mean, like when you're in a house, you think, okay, essentially how much trouble can I get in? I mean,
right.
I'm not trying to downplay it, but there's usually a door nearby, right, or there's a window nearby, or there's multiple ways out. But when you're crawling down a tunnel, there's only one way out.
Right.
Was that on your mind?
Not until what happened was on our third, actually we came out our fourth cylinder. We had started putting out fire on our third SCBA cylinders and came out, changed cylinders, went back down, let the engine through. There wasn't much truck company operations going on because this was just a tunnel. There was nothing to vent. Everything was concrete. Conduit was falling. I just, again, wanted to be that aggressive captain and kept pushing the guys. And I didn't really think about anything until my cylinder, the fourth time, I was just exhausted, and it started the bell went off. And the fireman I was with, we were probably, based on our hose length, 300 feet in. We had a 300-foot line, and we couldn't stretch anymore. And we were at that tip. And my bell started to ring. And because of our attacking the fire and then multiple doors of multiple buildings being open, that we were creating a lot of smoke. There was nowhere for the steam and everything that we were putting out to go anywhere. And we had to go back through the way we came. And it wasn't until I ran out of air and still had a little ways to go to get up the stairs and out of the building that it just occur to me that, boy, that was stupid. And I think the overall, I grew up in a firefighting family. My father was on the job, and I think back that I tell people, I kid my dad, even though he is my hero, that his captain, he was a lieutenant, the captain that he had worked with, I grew up idolizing, and there he, as a kid, he's running around in pull-down boots, never pulled them up, maybe a coat, if he had it on, and just a Army crew cut, and that's the kind of captain that to me was a captain. And there's much more to that, obviously, than there is, then 30, 40 years ago. But that was how I thought, and that aggressiveness and that just forgetting my situation, and that I wasn't in a house, that I wasn't in an apartment building, really, it changed quite a bit of how I think and how I deal with emergencies now. But
I want to recap this. I want to recap this. You're on your fourth bottle. You're 300 feet into the tunnel, approximately,
mm-hmm.
and your bell starts to ring.
Mm-hmm.
And there's smoke in the tunnel, so it isn't a
Yep.
matter of just, I can pull my face piece off and walk out of this mess. You have to get out 300 feet in the smoke environment on your fourth bottle, and you're not out, and you run out of air.
Pretty much. That's exactly what happened. My bell stopped ringing when I hit the steps going up through the business building. That's when my bell had stopped, and I had taken my regulator off, went up the steps, and was met by another mutual aid chief in a mutual aid company. By then, a lot of mutual aid had arrived, and again, in my city, like I mentioned before, things have changed dramatically in my town, but at that time, because of the cuts and we were a strong department, and we probably had the mentality that a lot of departments do at that time before cuts, or that we can do this, we can handle it. We don't need other departments to come in and handle our fires, and only for the largest of large fires, but not like it's still Elyria, it's still our fire. And so I think that kind of bit me too, that no matter what city was going in that tunnel, they were going to have an Elyria captain. The ego got me,
mm-hmm.
and it kind of wore me down. And I still consider myself aggressive now, but not. It was a wake-up call.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were in there and your bell went off, did you come out with someone else, or did you come out alone?
I had sent that fireman. I told him to go ahead and move out, and then it was just the two of us. And this fireman was he still is a very aggressive firefighter, good firefighter. Been in a lot of situations with him. I said, "Go ahead, Mike, start heading out." He started moving out. It wasn't so bad that we could see, but it wasn't. Again, it was still charged. A lot of steam, a lot of heat. That was the big thing. A lot of heat because we were in a concrete tunnel.
Right.
Communications wasn't the best because we were trying to get out. Again, we're in a big concrete tomb. And I just said, "Go ahead, Mike. I'm right here. Go ahead and start heading out." He still had air. His bell, I don't remember, is ringing. Just mine. And then we had a guy at the door, and he went ahead. Once he saw Mike, the firefighter in front of me, he started to make his way up the stairs. So the two firemen that were with me, they were they're going up the stairs, and they didn't think I was in any, I never put out any kind of hurt. I felt okay. I'm good. I'm okay. There's no big deal here. All right. And then once I went outside, I was going to give the chief, my assistant chief, the command chief that night, my good friend, I'm giving him a report, and the next thing I know, I'm laying on a cot.
Really? What happened?
Yeah. I think just the exhaustion and the smoke that I'd taken in just from the base and going up the stairs and through. Once we got up to the top of the business building, we still had a ways to go. The stairs in these buildings, they're not in these school buildings. We're not right at the ends of any kind of doors. You still had to go through, transverse probably another 20, 30 feet to an exit. And so once we got to the stairs, and another mutual aid chief grabbed me, and I'm like, "I'm okay, I'm out of here," getting another crew on that line and finish putting this, by then there was just basically spot fires throughout. and I said, just get another crew on that line and finish putting out this fire.
Mm-hmm.
And basically then just kind of crawled to the doorway, went outside. Fresh air felt good. It was a cold night. Felt okay. Man, I'm tired. I'm going to be able to take a nap tomorrow. And when I was talking to the chief, that was it.
I got a question for you, Joe. And you may have never thought about this. Maybe you have, but I'll ask it. On occasion, sometimes when firefighters are inside, say, a house, and I'm not saying that's a good practice or a bad practice, I'm just saying that I have observed it and perhaps done it earlier in my career. When the bell starts to go off, you don't necessarily leave immediately, especially in a house. You're like, oh, I'm 8 feet from the door. I'm okay. If you would have hesitated and your bell would have went off and you'd have hesitated and say, like we almost got it, I don't want to leave just yet. How much time do you think you had if you'd have stayed? How much time would it have taken before it had probably been the point of no return for you?
Well, I definitely think about it. I think what would have happened, to be honest with you, is if I would have passed out inside the tunnel area, I think it would have been, by the time everybody got out and said, oh, Captain Pronesti, he was right behind us, now he's not, they go down, it would have been a hell of a lot harder to get me upstairs and, through the remaining piece of the tunnel, up the stairs, through the business building. Hopefully they would have thrown some air on me, but it definitely would have been a lot different situation. It would have put an added stress on an already stressful environment. Mayday is never a good thing, and on top of smoke throughout, even though, we had fire was concentrated in the tunnel, the fire never penetrated the buildings, upper floors of the buildings, because of the construction of the tunnel. What happened was you just had so much smoke being produced in all these buildings that it took a lot of resources to vent these buildings, search the buildings, and you throw a firefighter down inside it. I wouldn't want to do that, running the fire. I would have been not pissed, but I would have been, oh man, okay.
Now there's a chance that if a mayday would have been called in the tunnel, it might not have, that communication might not have made it out anyhow because of the thickness of the concrete walls and stuff.
Yeah, we at the time we ran on all communications were on one frequency. Things have changed now, but our dispatcher was a firefighter that sat in a watch office and ran dispatch from our central station, and we ran everything on one channel, dispatch and fireground, and we would try to keep our fireground communication on a simplex or push a button to go to a simplex of our main frequency. So we would try to keep the portables on a simplex or talk around, but when you would have a fire, some guys would be on a repeater, some guys would be, and playing the tapes, that's exactly what happened. Some guys were on a repeater, not able to get out. Some guys were on a simplex, and they still couldn't get out. So to answer your question, yeah, communications and trying to listen to the tape of this fire was really bad. And on top of it, we were about, again, the farthest point north of our fire station and our repeater and antennas and all that kind of stuff.
Now, when you went in, estimate for me about how long it took for you to get from the point when you were on your way in, from the point you entered smoke on your air until you got to the point where your bell started ringing, the physical distance there. About how much time? So from the time, let's just say you went on air at the front of the building, all the way down into the tunnel, down the tunnel, all the way to where you're at the nozzle and you're spraying water. How much time did it take to get from there to there?
Boy, not long. And I joke that I'm in better shape now than I was then. As far as running, and I thought I was okay then, but I wasn't. And I would say probably 10 minutes.
Okay.
If that. I mean, I used up a lot of air on my third and fourth cylinders. Just tired.
And for you, Joe, typically when your bell goes off, and and you're working in a fire with exertion and all, when your bell goes off, about how much time do you have, typically, under stress and exertion until you're going to run out of air? 5 minutes?
Boy, less than. I
Okay.
would say less than.
So when you're on the nozzle and your bell went off, did it occur to you, I'm 10 minutes in with less than 5 minutes of air? Was that on your mind?
No.
Okay.
And it was just one of those things that if I could hit the reset button, you do so many things differently. I hope we never have a fire like this. It's the only place we possibly could have had a fire like we faced in my city, but it happened. And it never really crossed my mind until thinking about it in the days and weeks and years later that was dumb. And then it really hit me hard when I went to a command class for Blue Card Incident Command, that the guy's teaching at the Pronesti, he mentioned, he goes, you never want to go more than 175 feet into a building. And that's when it hit me that, man, well, from the front door to where I was at, I was way more than 175 feet. And to this day, when I'm commanding a fire in the absence of our chief, when I fill in for him when he's off, or when I'm the captain, I'm definitely thinking about how far I'm sending in guys, and they're not going to go real far, anymore. It's just not going to happen. It's just a dumb idea.
And as you've reflected back on this, tell me what you learned, what you would do differently, and what advice you would have for the listeners based on this experience that you had.
Well, I think number one is know things that are, be ready right from the get-go. This was a house of cards that fell when you think back. Morale, again, and it starts with your environment. And I don't mean the firefighting environment. I mean your internal work environment. And Elyria is not alone in cuts and everything. That a lot of fire departments go through a lot of bad things internally with reductions. And at that time, it was about the height, the hottest of hot moments in my department as far as cuts and what was going to happen, and guys on the chopping block with layoffs and so on and so forth. And you're trying to lead them and be their captain, knowing that these things were happening. And so the atmosphere inside the fire stations wasn't the best. Add that, I got a guy from another state coming in and doing a report that we all knew was not going to fare well for the Elyria, Ohio Fire Department. And now you throw in an automatic alarm and you just think, well, it's just an automatic alarm. I'll be right back to the station. And it's just your whole mindset. You got to be ready. You got to be on your game. And I don't think I was 100% on my game that night. And I won't let that happen again. And I encourage listeners to, no matter what happens, what kind of alarm you go to, you got to be ready.
What else?
I think that there's a difference in leadership. I like to study leadership now. I thought I was a good leader then. I don't think I led. I'm all about leadership again in the fire service, and to be that good captain that everybody wants to work for, and to be the first in and last out and all that stuff. And I think I got over my head in that night, that I wanted to always be in there, that I didn't trust anybody else, or, I got this. This is a big fire, and I'll be damned if Joe Pronesti's not going to be in the front of this. And I kind of lost all situational awareness because I was more worried about being in there, and who cares what number cylinder it was, that I let my guard down. And just too much, too long of a time. Didn't really think about, again, this isn't a house. This isn't, not I've been on 3 and 4 cylinder fires, and again, balloon frame, that's our bread and butter. You got to go through those in a house fire in Elyria. But it's a different situation. You're absolutely right. It was, your exit. You can go to a window, take some air, relax. The fire's out, even though you may be chasing hot pockets. Man, we were in a gun barrel, and there was no place to get air. There was no place to stick your face, and it just didn't go work. Keep coming out, get a new cylinder, go back, come out, get another cylinder. And this was, again, more than that, because we were trying to find different ways in, and when we finally did, I just was done, and I ignored that.
Does your department change anything or do anything different or have any discussions about what we would do if we were back to the college for another fire in the tunnel?
I would say I would answer your question in 2 parts. Fire prevention wise, that college is the safest it's ever been now. Everything's been rebuilt, cleaned up, new fire alarm system. They poured a ton of money into that college, and the vow that it'll never happen again. From the fire department standpoint, no. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I love my department, and it's more the fact that we still don't have a pre-plan for it. I think we're more along the lines of, well, it's not going to happen again because everything is sprinklered now, even the tunnels. But it just doesn't have to be Lorain County Community College. It could be anywhere in my town that is would be problematic if there was a fire. But we would probably fight the fire the same way. I would, from my standpoint, though, if I was on the buggy and running it, I'd be certainly different. Not that my chief erred in any way. He just trusted me, and we still have that trust, but he just knew we had worked together a long time that it was okay. Well, he's got this. He had confidence in me, and I don't think he wanted anybody else in there but me. But I think that's different now. We've used more. I would say that we probably, because of our staffing is cut now, mutual aid would play an even bigger role, and we would probably utilize more staffing. That definitely was changed. But if I was the captain on the truck, I would do things a lot differently. I don't think I would have more of a take a step back approach and take it all in. And you have a lot to do with that, because I really didn't start studying a lot of situational awareness and everything until I caught on to what you were doing with firefighting and firefighters after this. And so definitely would change personally, and I try to teach that to my fellow firefighters and my officers. So that part might change, but overall, the organization, I would say no.
Okay. Did you give any, after this incident was over and you had a chance to think and reflect on it, did you give any thought to your mortality? In other words, did you think, I could have died. I could have died in there.
I don't want to make it sound like, I've listened to your other close calls, and we've had this conversation that I don't want to, and I do my best. I study I'm a student of this profession, and so I study a lot of line of duty deaths and a lot of close calls, and I would say mine was more of a scare than a close call, in the fact that, I didn't drop down inside the building, or it wasn't truly a mayday inside. But yeah, I think maybe not so much my mortality as it is my career and my my age and just that I can't do the same things, nor should any firefighter push themselves to that, because it's a different generation. It's a different thing that, again, that it doesn't, I guess, make a difference what the construction is, that you you got to pace yourself, and you got to use your head, and not let your ego or your passion overtake it. And egos eat brains, and I think on that night, part of my brain was eaten by my ego of being firefighter. And I've been doing this job since I was 19, so I know no other. And that, I grew up around aggressive firefighting. I never liked, or the building's still burning and everybody's out front taking a break, and that always would bother me. But now it's like, it's okay. It's just a thing. It's just a building. We'll get it. Well, I think you need to display better leadership in the fact that, okay, guys, let's come out, let's take a break, let's, or call for help. That maybe you can't take a break, that your guys can take a break, but, you still have active fire or rescues or whatever, and the point is, you better get enough help on the scene to say, okay, Engine 5, come on out, take a blow, get a break. Mutual Aid Company 1 is going to take your spot. That the world does not rise, the sun does not rise and set on the Elyria Fire Department. It's going to take a lot more help to get things, large events handled in my city, or large fires in my city handled.
Mm-hmm. How many total firefighters were on the scene, say when you came out of the basement for that fourth time?
By the time I came out, I would say we probably had about, besides my department, we probably had about 4 other fire departments on the scene. So, total, we probably had close to 40 firemen on the scene. But as mutual aid was coming in, again, my boss had to do the right thing, and I firmly believe in making sure that the other buildings were clear, that we did not have extension. We concentrated on going and getting the fire with the original resources we had. There was no way of knowing that we did or did not have extension to the other buildings. And again, the buildings would sit separate. It was the tunnels underneath that were connected. And so you couldn't exactly stretch hose lines. You needed the position engine companies on, near a building, or, if the ones that were, again, parts were sprinklered. So we knew that if we did have extension, that, okay, above the tunnel, that the sprinklers would activate, but you still had smoke, you still had to check them. So it was an overwhelming response. And while I was, before that, about 6 months prior, when I was chief, we burned a 4-block old mill constructed abandoned factory that we had probably close to 70 to 100 firefighters participate in, but it was all defensive, and it was a different situation. It was kind of, a closer, tighter knit area. This was a lot different, and so we had to spread our resources around 48 acres.
Now, I'm going to back up a little bit in the interview when you said you came out of the basement, up the stairs, outside, was having a conversation, you said, with your chief. I'm assuming that he was the incident commander?
Yeah, my assistant in the City of Elyria Fire Department, the battalion or platoon chief's called, his rank is an assistant chief. Drives a buggy. He's our duty chief. And, I went up to him, and he was at his command post at the buggy. And I was giving him a rundown of what was going on.
Okay.
That's how we operated.
Yeah, well, the point I want to hone in on is when you said, and the next thing I knew, I was on the cot. So do you remember that happening? Or you were giving him a report, really, and all of a sudden...
That's it. I was on done.
Huh?
I just was done. I just had collapsed, and they grabbed me,
okay,
and threw me on a cot and put me in a squad. So
how much time between being on the steps, breathing the smoke, until you collapsed outside? How much time?
Oh, not much. A couple minutes, really.
Couple minutes. So
probably, yeah, just
you
a
were
couple minutes.
maybe just a couple of minutes from having that happen inside the building. Inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, when I hit the steps,
have you thought about how
and
close
came out,
this call was for you, Joe?
I do now, and I use it as a learning experience for not only myself but for other firefighters. Like I said, I enjoy teaching. I enjoy instructing. I teach part-time at a community college nearby, not the particular one that burned, but another one in Cleveland, Fire Academy. And whenever we do SCBAs and orienting our new cadets to SCBAs, I always talk about the importance of it and its limitations, and it's and I talk about that event. And again, I'm not trying to do it for the applause, because I've really, in 26 years, gone to the hospital twice. Once was for just to have my eyes washed out, and then this time. And so I'm not one to, I don't want to say take a dive or anything. I've just never been injured. Never,
right.
Aches and pains and strains that you get, but never go down.
Right.
And I just, I think about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Joe, you'd mentioned that you do some teaching at the college, and before we started the recording, you had shared with me your excitement about an upcoming opportunity for you to be a presenter at the FDIC International 2015 in Indianapolis, and you're teaching a class called "What's Not So Ordinary About Your Main Street Fire." All right. So, give the listeners the 1-minute elevator pitch as to why they would want to come and listen to you on this topic.
Well, I think if you work in a town, an old town, you have some sort of main street, some sort of taxpayer, ordinary construction, business on the first floor, apartments or offices above, and these adjoining structures, when you have a fire in them, the race is on as far as stopping them. And it's different in the fact that a lot of culture, a lot of history, and if you burn down a city block, all eyes are on you as a fire department as to why, and they're happening all the time. And so this class will give you a great foundation to pre-plan your buildings, your main street, your downtown, and firefighting, review construction, fire attack, everything that you can think of about these buildings, we will go over because my town has had fires in them. And if you have one or have had a fire, definitely want to take in. It'll be, I promise, a very worthwhile class to attend. And most importantly, you'll be able to take something back, because we will be doing some simulations, exercises in the class that you'll be able to take back to your department. And so it's more than just a one-day affair. It'll definitely give you something to bring back and teach your fellow firefighters.
Good. I hope I'll be there as well. I hope our classes are not on competing times, so I can sit in and listen to your class.
I would love to have you, so that means I have more than I got one person in my class, so that's great.
Yeah, but I'm a heckler,
so
Joe, so.
And I don't care. You can sit in the front row and teach me how to fight these fires. But no, I appreciate it, and I do love giving back. I do love instructing and writing and teaching. It's a passion that has really, in the last couple of years, has driven me. And,
Now you send out a daily or near daily email sharing some training tips as well. So what's that about?
Yeah, again, I think in our society there's so much out there on the internet, and time is of the essence. And one of the things that drives me crazy is whether it's paid or part-time or whatever you work in, drilling and teaching, I hate the excuse of, well, we have nothing to train on, we have nothing to teach or nothing. I haven't had time to look. A lot of people get up in the morning and read the newspaper. I'll get up and search the internet, or I have a hard drive full of training things I've collected and firefighting things that, representing everything from truck company, engine company, construction, everything that is all together, that I'll send out information on daily that you can take and deliver to your firefighters in a drill. It's not a soapbox. I don't tell you what I would do or how I would do things. I'll just send it out and say, here's a quick drill, size up. I'll send out a video or a simulation I'll create, send it out, use it how you want. So it's not really what I would do, thank goodness. It's just, here it is. What would you do if this was in your town or your response? And a lot of it is geared for the coffee table, and because everybody's sitting at the coffee table nowadays with their phones and twiddling their iPads or iPhones. You know what? It's time that this officer can grab this and say, hey guys, look at this. Let's look at this real quick. And even if it's 10 minutes, you're delivering something. And I'm a big, big believer in that.
And how do they get on your list?
All you have to do is send me an email. Just reach out to me. You can send me an email to E like Edward, F like Frank, D like David, Captain like the rank, EFD Captain 33 at gmail.com. And I'll put you on the list. And again, I'll try to send something out daily. If there's something going on in the country, will send a quick update on it. And I have the ability to capture radio traffic from around the country, and I'll do that and send it out. And maybe if major events going on, I'll send out a street view with the location, the building, and the audio traffic, and say, well, what happens if you face this fire? What would you do? So all kinds of little things that I do, and anybody wants to get on, I promise I'll send you some good training information.
Okay, good. Well, thanks, Joe, for giving me the gift of your time and the listeners the gift of your time to share your close call story, although I think you play it down very well. Well, it really wasn't that close of a call. I think that it was. But we'll let you sit there comfortably and talk yourself down from how close you came. And that's why I was asking those questions about the timing to get out and the timing, before you went down. Sometimes we're so close to how close our call was, we don't really even see it as that big a deal because we didn't get hurt and we didn't have a bad outcome. But you were just a very short time from having a very catastrophic outcome, and that meets my definition of the close call. It doesn't have to have blood on the ground or broken bones, or don't have to have somebody that went to the hospital or have a close call. It's anything that if the circumstances were just slightly different, the outcome could have been catastrophic. So, Joe, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're with me. Thanks for giving us the gift of your knowledge.
Thank you, Chief, and really thank you for everything that you do for the job. And these podcasts are amazing training and amazing. It's awesome what we can do nowadays with these things, and so I appreciate what you do for our service.
Well, that's it. Episode 31 is complete. Thank you, Joe Pronesti, Captain with Elyria, Ohio Fire Department, for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk with me today. Thank you to our listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with me today, too. I sincerely appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. If you've experienced or witnessed a near miss or a close call and would like to be interviewed on this show, visit samatters.com. Click on the Contact Us link and send me a message. Thank you in advance for sharing your lessons learned so that others may live. If you like the show, please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and search for SA Matters Radio and subscribe to the podcast and leave your feedback. If you like the show, I'd really appreciate it if you'd give it a 5-star review as well. Not only will this motivate me to work even harder, but it also helps others to find the show. If you've been inspired and want to learn more about situational awareness, consider becoming a member of the SA Matters community. It's free, and when you sign up, you'll receive that special report I mentioned earlier in the episode that I've created just for new members called 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. To claim your free gift, head over to samatters.com, click on the red box on the right side of the home page. Be safe out there. And may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.